Hello, my name is Cole Hawkins, and welcome to the Mono Basin Historical Society meeting. We endeavor to start all of our meetings with our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the unceded traditional land of the Kutzetaka people. And I'd like to welcome you all to the meeting. Uh, we're having a short business meeting. Uh, And we have absolutely no reports that I'm aware of from some of our officers are in Death Valley, and I'm jealous. But anyway, we do have several announcements. Now, first, I'm not sure whether Randy or Greg wanted to do it, but did one of you want to talk about phalaropes?
I have to unmute and
Randy's ready to go, but it says he can't release his own video
Oh,
ah,
really?
because the host has disabled it. So the host has to release
Okay.
him and he'll be
Now,
ready.
now try it.
Okay, we can
Start my video.
All right, here he goes.
All right. Thank you so much for this opportunity. Um, I've organized a weekend for Greg and I are members of the Oakland Rotary Club, which is one of the largest Rotary clubs. We're the number 3 club out of 42,000 clubs worldwide. And a former president visited us at our Mono house, and he said I should do a gathering of for the Mono Lake the Rotary clubs. So we've invited Rotary clubs from throughout Northern California and Northern Nevada to come to Mono Lake. And the signature event during our weekend, it's going to be the 13th through the 15th. But the signature event I'm calling Night of the Phalarope. It'll be at the Lee Vining Community Center, 6:30 on June 14th, Saturday. And I'm working with Janet, of course, on a very fun program. And we'll have a big wine auction. And we'll raise money for Experience Ambientalia, which is the high school student exchange program between Mar Chiquita, Argentina, and Lee Vining, California. So we're really excited about getting people turned out to learn more about this wonderful program and to raise money because airfare to a remote place in Argentina is expensive, I understand. So we're looking forward to inviting all of our friends in the Mono Basin to this benefit. And I'm looking forward to you meeting our dear friends from Rotary clubs from throughout Northern California and Northern Nevada. So thank you for this opportunity.
Well, thank you. I guess the big news for the museum is that we've hired a museum manager, Ken Bonerundle, but he is unavailable today, and we will introduce him to you at our next meeting. And if you come in person, you can meet him in person if you don't already know him. Uh, the museum will be opening May 23rd, and it will close on October 5th. We're starting the season open 5 days a week from 10 to 4, and we're going to be closed on Tuesday and Wednesdays. If you have a burning desire or even a mild desire to work in the museum, contact Ken, or if you don't know how to get a hold of him, anyone on the board or any of the officers. Um, the Birders Breakfast. We're doing the Birders Breakfast at Chautauqua again. Are any of the organizers online tonight? I guess not. Uh, that's going to be 5 to 8 a.m., I believe, on Saturday. Okay, and we've got three people who have announcements. First, we have Janice Mendez. Are you there, Janice?
I don't see her name. And you just let's go back to the bird breakfast for a minute. You didn't say what month. It's at the Bird Chautauqua, which is in July, and that's Saturday, July 19th is this breakfast. So just if people want to get up early and help
Yeah.
out, this is a fundraiser for the museum.
Dave, you sure that isn't June?
Oh, wait a minute. I'm yeah, I'm Yeah, I am not sure that yet. It is June 20th, Friday, June 20th. I'm sorry.
And if you are an early riser or just want to meet a bunch of fellow birders, and just send an email to any of us, including curator at monobasinhistory.com, which is where the website would lead you to send an email. And we'll forward anything you send to us to the right people.
And it's monobasinhistory.org, org. Right?
Should we move on?
Yeah.
Janice Mendez told me that she was going to be here tonight, but apparently something's come up. She's planning on doing the Indian taco sale. Do any of the people out there know what date it is?
That would be July 19th.
That
Okay.
was the one I was misreading. That's the Saturday, July 19th. And yeah, her family has done this for a few years now. Great fundraiser.
Okay. I told you we had no reports, but we may have a trustees report. Or maybe Rich just wants to talk. Rich, you there?
I have been talking so far.
Well,
Here, I'll even show you me. So yeah, we had a recent trustees meeting. You've heard much of what we talked about here. We scheduled the opening of the museum, and we talked about staffing. And any of you out in Zoom land who have a hankering for hanging out in a pretty classic old museum, we can always use volunteers there. There are other announcements that Dave Carl has, though, so I think I'll end there and turn it over to Dave.
Okay. I will jump into the first thing that's coming up this month is Earth Days on the 22nd of April. That's this year, that's a Tuesday. And we have a 2-mile stretch of Highway 395 where we do highway cleanup. And our signs are out there that says that that's Historical Society's segments. We go through the town. So it's a 1 mile south of town it begins and goes through Levining and then 1 mile north of town. And I'm looking for helpers. If you would like to meet us at 10 a.m., we should be done by noon on that Saturday, the 22nd. Meet at the museum. We have all of the gear that you need, all the bags and the vests and the helmets and things that Caltrans requires for safety. And we'll go through all that. And if you would like to do that to help us, please email either curator@monobasinhistory.org or email me, because I'm running this one. It's davidcarlbooks@gmail.com, and Carl spelled with an E. So yeah, I would like to have 8 people or so. 8 would be the minimum number. If we get more, it'll just go that much quicker. So I hope some of you will do that. You could also just tonight, we've got the chat. You can go into the chat and say, yeah, I want to do that, and I'll be there. So that would be great. That was one of my announcements. We have not made any details about what the Ghost of the Sagebrush tour will be in August, except for the date. We know the topic is going to be Lundy this year, and the new resort operators up in Lundy are offering to be a big help to us for this one. And Linda LaPierre will be there, who's our local expert on Lundy. It's Friday, August 22nd, and Saturday, August 23rd for the tour. Friday's the evening dinner. So no more details right now for you, but just put it on your calendar. What else did I have to? Oh, I wanted to just run through what's coming for future speakers, and then we will, with Cole, I think we'll be ready to go and introduce our speaker for tonight. But for the future, just so you know what's coming, we'll always meet on the first Monday of each month. And in May, that is May 5th. And our speaker on May 5th at our meeting, which will be an in-person meeting with a potluck dinner at 6 o'clock, and then the meeting speaker starting at 6:30. And as always, we do the hybrid thing with the Zoom if you're out of the area. And I encourage you, if you're in the area, to come and support join our audience in the room at the community center. So anyway, May 5th, it's um, Mike Mike Prather. Mike is very involved, has been for decades down at the Owens Lake. And just tell you the title of his program is Patsiata. That's the Indian Paiute name for Owens Lake. Patsiata's Returning Wildlife, Hemispheric Importance. And it's all about how a little bit of water based on the required dust mitigation that DWP has had to do has brought back life to parts of the Owens Lake bed. So that's going to be a great talk. And Mike is a real good speaker. So keep in mind, first Mondays of each month as we go through the summer. So Cole, back to you. Do you want to introduce Bob, or did you want me to do that?
Well, I thought you were going to do it, but I will do it.
Whichever.
We could introduce him as a man who needs no introduction, but that would sort of defeat the whole purpose. So Bob is one of our trustees, and he is our historian. He's an emeritus professor of history and environmental studies at Whittier College, and he's the author of several books. And he's got a new one, which I hope is coming out really soon, which is called The Mono Lake Basin and Environmental History. So here's Bob.
Well, hey,
let's
Cole,
introduce.
before Bob starts, I thought I ought to relay something that was in the chat. When you put your laptop on your lap and you talk and you rock back and forth, we all get seasick out here in Zoom land. So I was asked to relay that. So anyway, the rest of us are going to disappear from video land and turn it over to Bob.
Well, wait a minute now. We didn't introduce the topic for tonight, or the title, although if you saw the publicity for the meeting, you saw this. Bob's talk tonight is more than 1,000 words, a monobasin photographic and environmental history. And now I think we're ready for you, Bob.
Bob, you're muted. Earth to Bob, you're muted. Oh, Bob, you're muted.
Okay. I'm now unmuted.
Much better.
All right. So I'm sharing my screen here, so hold on just a half a second. Anything happening, Rich?
We can see it, but it's not full screen yet. If you go to the upper left corner and click on the blue area there.
Well, I'm
No, up. Okay.
Hold on. Let me get this back to full screen here.
If you go slideshow, it should automatically go to full screen.
Well, we had it going before, Rich.
Well, up at the top there's a bunch of tabs. Two-thirds of the way to the right is slideshow.
I don't see slideshow.
Slideshow. To the left, further to the left, down, down, down. There you go.
We seeing it now?
We are.
Are we seeing me?
We are seeing you, a little version of you, and a big version of more than 1,000 words.
Okay, well, I can't see myself, but that's okay. That's all right. So, yeah, my talk tonight is based on a photograph that I'm using in the book, Mono Lake Basin and Environmental History. And I'm in the book manuscript, there's maybe a couple paragraphs where I discuss it. So I'm going to be doing a little bit more interrogating of this photograph. to see what we might learn about environmental history and the environmental history of the Mono Basin. Just very briefly, environmental history, a very simple understanding of it is that it deals with humans and nature, or humans and the environment. It looks at the way environments condition the way in which people inhabit an environment, use it, gain their sustenance from it, and in thereby doing all that, changing it. And the way in which a changed environment then affects human beings and their societies over the long run. And as you can see, it's an iterative process, and it leads to quite a bit of understanding of both humans and of the environment that we live in. So let's see, I got to go to the next slide. All right, so here's the photograph that we're going to interrogate. I mean, I think most of you know that the saying, a photograph is worth 1,000 words, and in this case, it's going to be more than 1,000 words. But I want to start with interrogating this and thinking about, what are some questions we can ask about this? First, when and where is this? Take a look at this, and we'll see if you can think about where this is. What can be learned from a photograph, and who took the photo and why? So if you take a look at this, we've got cattle, we've got some cowboys here, we've got some calves, so we could get us some dates. We got the mountains in the background, and we've got some water running through here, and here's a couple of fence posts. So as I'm talking here for just a minute, place yourself in the basin and try to think of where this might be. The next slide is actually going to tell you where it is and the date as well. So there's a couple of captions that come with this photograph, and I'm just going to read them. The one on the top right is Cane Irrigation Company, Mono Basin, California. Beef cattle on summer range on Cane Ranch. Over 1,000 head of cattle are in the herd shown in this photograph. And here's a really important sentence that we'll unpack as well. This ranch is irrigated with water impounded at Grant Lake Reservoir below the Rush Creek Power Plant. Photographed July 12, 1927. There's another shorter caption. Some of the purebred cattle on the Cane Ranch. Our cattle have topped the market in Los Angeles Union stockyards upon a number of occasions. And someone who heard me talk about this said, how'd they get to LA? So you probably know and have seen the Cane Ranch House. This is the clubhouse and ranch headquarters. It was built in 1923. There's a photograph of the construction in the lower right-hand corner. And we know where it is. It's still there. This is a photograph that I took this winter. And it's now the LADWP Cane Ranch facility. Here's 158 over here, the north part of the loop. And it's near the intersection of 395 and the June Lake Loop. So here's a Google Earth image. And just to orient you, because I'll be talking about a bunch of this as we go along. But here's 395. This is 158, the loop, and the Cane Ranch House and the LADW facility is here. This is Walker Lake or Walker Creek. This is Parker Creek coming down here. And here we have Rush Creek over here. And then off of 158 is Parker Creek Road, Walker Creek Road, and that goes all the way over to the other side. Now, I shared this with Tim Messick, who I think is on the Zoom tonight, to talk about this photograph. And Tim is he's a photographer and a botanist with quite a lot of experience in the Mono Basin area. And he took a look at that photograph and annotated it. So we can see not only is it Cane Ranch, what we got from the caption, but we can actually see we got the Mono Pass over here, we got Mount Gibbs, Mount Dana, Walker Creek coming down here. Over here is just an edge of Parker Creek. So this puts this photograph on the Parker Creek floodplain on the north side of Parker Creek and between Parker and Walker Creek as well. And I wouldn't have been able to do this without Tim's help. And I thank you a whole lot for that, Tim. I'm going to show a couple more slides that Tim produced. But I put down here POV, point of view, because this is where the camera is, right, taking a photograph of this. And what Tim did is he took those sight lines and put them on a Google map, Google Earth map, and brought them back. And where they intersect is the place where the photograph was taken. And as you can see, here's the Cane Ranch and the Cane Ranch facility, Parker Creek here, and it's just on the north side of Parker Creek. And that was important for me because I wanted to take a photograph of it from that particular point of view. And what you can see is, well, this is what it looked like on January 12th before we got much snow. But here we've got Bloody Canyon, we got the peaks. Here's Walker Creek down here. And we've got a bunch of rabbit bush in the foreground. And in the background, there is some sagebrush moving in as well. So if you take a look at these two photographs, I tried to do as best I could to replicate where it is today and what it looks like. It's a little higher over here. But there's 98 years between July 12th, 1927 and January 12th, 2025 when I took this one. And, you know, if we do a little bit of Sesame Street, we can we can see that there's a difference between the photo in 27 and the photo in 25. And if we could say, well, what's the difference? And I think you can see the difference. And I'm going to explore those differences a bit more in more detail. But first, you know, obviously we got cattle grazing here. I just want to give you a brief overview of cattle grazing in the Mono Basin. Starting with Euro-American settlers around 1860 who brought cattle and sheep into the basin, along with their other, horses and a few other things as well. But by about 1880, there's some evidence that cattle and sheep had overgrazed the native plants. So pretty soon, the sheep were herded into upper meadows and on leased land. Cattle were fed with hay, alfalfa grown on farms and ranches. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the Cane Ranch, but the Cane Ranch had a large spread, more than just that one photograph. They were grazing up to 2,000, 3,000 cattle on both sides of what is now 395. And I'll get to this as well. The Cane Ranch and most of its properties were sold in 1933 to the LADWP, which even while it was diverting water through the not through, around Parker or Grant Lake Dam and into the aqueduct down to LA, they were putting enough water into the grazing areas to keep cattle going. But in 1990, with the LADWP being ordered by courts to restore Parker and Walker Creeks to what they were somewhat to get water in there, there's been a grazing moratorium so that there haven't been any cattle or sheep grazing in that part of the Mono Basin since then. So it's been only 25 years or so, well, 35 years since there haven't been any cattle grazing on the Cane Ranch. So why am I interested in the Cane Ranch photo? Well, it's one indicator of environmental change in the Mono Basin, and it points to ranches and farms as powerful forces of environmental change. Basically, what farms and ranches do, farmers, they remove the original land cover and change it into something, well, into farms and into ranches. The photo in the upper right here is the Jake Matley Farm and Ranch, and this was just east of 395. So 395 is over here, and we're looking out toward the cones there. This photo is Tom Sylvester, and his farm and ranch was up in the northwest part of the lake, and he's walking through his field of alfalfa. So to get the settler farms and ranches, and to get alfalfa growing, to have everything else that you can see that the Matleys were growing, there had to be the removal of sagebrush to make way for farms and cattle. And of course, for the settlers and ranchers, sagebrush was the problem. It needed to be gotten rid of, and it really wasn't valued for much for anything at all. So who cares about sagebrush? And I want to make an argument that we probably should care about sagebrush. So if you think about what's the most important feature of the Mono Basin landscape, mostly we'll think about Mono Lake. Here's the Google Earth photo, and here's an artsy photo of Tufa as well. So it's the iconic part of the basin, but literally to look at the lake, you have to literally overlook the the sagebrush. So let's make a case for bringing sagebrush back into our understanding of the Mono Basin. And we can start by figuring out and understanding that the Mono Basin, the Mono Lake Basin, is in the Great Basin. We are on the western edge of the Great Basin. And Stephen Trimble made an argument in a book called The Sagebrush Ocean that the defining characteristic of the Great Basin is sagebrush, big sagebrush, Artemisia tridentata. So it is a definition of who we are and what we have been, is that we are in the Great Basin and we are a sagebrush ecosystem. So if you take a look at sagebrush plant communities in the Mono Basin, there's 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that you can look at them. But depending on how much groundwater there are plant communities that are almost all sagebrush. You have what most of us see when we look at the sagebrush is a combination of sagebrush, bitterbrush, and rabbitbrush. And then we've got sagebrush, creeping wild rye, and a few others. And then there's an understory. You can see some of the understory here. You've got Indian rice grass, and here you've got creeping wild rye. There's other grasses and herbs that make up the entire plant community. And the plant community is also host for a rather interesting array of other animals, all the way up from rodents and other small animals to jackrabbits, and of course the sage grouse, the tri-state sage grouse. It's habitat for those animals as well. So let's go back to the photograph of the Cane Ranch cattle, the 1,000 head of cattle. So one of the questions I was interested in is this a natural meadow or was it created by humans? And what I think is that there may have been some water coming from Walker Creek, maybe from Parker, but this ranch is irrigated with water impounded at Grant Lake Reservoir. So what they're doing is irrigating this to try to get rid of sagebrush and make way for plants and grasses and herbs that are fodder for cattle. So here's another photograph. This is a 1913 photograph, probably taken by W.D. McPherson. And there's a long story as to why he's taking photographs of this. But this is, again, this is east of 395. 120 is over here, so you kind of know what this looks like. And I'll just read this. Farrington East Side Ditch taken 1913, showing sagebrush in background in bottom of ditch, 7 years old. And here's the critical point. Water kills sagebrush. So here's another photograph from that same collection showing what the area to the east of 395 looked like before all the sagebrush was killed to make way for farms and ranches. Here's another photograph that shows some of that transformation. This is a 1903 photograph by Seahart Miriam, an interesting guy. I think this is taken from near where the Matley Ranch is. But what you can see in the foreground is all these haystacks, literally haystacks, going all the way, almost all the way down to Rush Creek. So all this area, and I'll show you where the Matley irrigation ditch was coming from, is being irrigated to get rid of the sagebrush to make it possible to grow, especially alfalfa. So I want to talk a little bit about the Farrington Ranch and a couple of other things leading up to the Cane Ranch. But here's a 1900, come on, get back there. 1900 map done by the U.S. Geological Service, a land classification map of 1900. It's not completely filled in. The red spots are cultivated land, and there was more cultivated land than that shows. But I just wanted to indicate here there's a couple of large grazing areas, one in the meadow leading into Grant Lake before the dams were built. But then there's this very large area here, which is basically where, let's see, here's Parker Creek, and here's the road going through here. So the Cane Ranch house is built around here. Farrington is over here. The Farrington Ranch and Farrington Ranch house is up here. And that's glossed as grazing land. And the question is, again, natural or man-made. And when Archibald Farrington, who was the largest landowner in the area, bought land here and elsewhere, he started building an irrigation ditch that diverted water right about here from Rush Creek, took it along pretty much where the road is, and took it into this area and let the water go into the meadow, and to even make it more of a meadow than it had been. Also, part of Walker Creek was diverted into that area as well. So the meadow, the grazing land, had some natural start, but it was helped along rather dramatically by human hands. So the methods, and here's some, I'll talk a little bit more about this irrigation system. But in 1922, a Cal professor by the name of Sidney Harding was asked to do an investigation of what was alleged to be the misuse of water in the Mono Basin by the Cane Irrigation Company, by those who wanted to have it for farming as opposed to doing other things with it. And so the 1921 Mono County Grand Jury issued some findings. I've not been able to find the report, but Harding was hired to do an investigation and a report. And so what he says is the methods used on these lands consist of keeping the area continuously wet in order to kill the native brush and produce growth of native or seeded grasses. Eventually, it's expected that a meadow condition may be brought about. There's another report. This is by a Forest Service official, a guy by the name of, I forgot his first name, Kramer, who said by 1928, practically the entire flow of Rush Creek during the irrigation system is spread over the lands. And here's some of the enhanced irrigation system that the Cane Irrigation Company built to be able to divert nearly all water out of Rush Creek for 6 months out of the year. Now, the Cane Irrigation Company was not the first ones to build and use irrigation throughout the Mono Basin. The map on the right here, I put together from the land records showing all of the patents that were given in the Mono Basin. There were about 10 more over here, but I didn't want to bother putting those on there. But most of the land patents are where there's water, especially along Rush Creek. Got to go back. So here's Rush Creek. Lee Viney Creek is up here. And here, the map on the left is a map that was produced in 1911 by the Mono Irrigation Company, which was actually a company owned by, put together by J.S. Cane as a predecessor to the Kane Irrigation Company. But I want to show you, and you can see the density of irrigation ditches around Lee Vining, Rush Creek, and then there are some ditches up here coming off of Mill Creek and Wilson Creek as well. But I want to show next an enlargement of this area here. So here you can see the names of the patent holders. Here's Christian Matley up here. We got some more Matleys here. Christian here, and then here's Jake Matley down here. And you can see his ditch is coming from water that's being diverted out of Lee Vining Creek and then wraps around Wilson Butte here and goes over into his land. He's got a couple of ditches going that way. Archibald Farrington is over here. And then the big amount of irrigation is coming off of water that is being diverted out of Rush Creek. Here's Grant Lake down here. And there's a number of ditches taking water down the east side of Parker Creek and between Parker and Rush Creek here. And then you've got some going, okay, so 395 is going about through here like this. So you've got a lot of these ditches going on the east side of 395. And that one from 1913 is showing ditches that are in this area over here. All right, so by 1911, much of the Mono Basin is being irrigated, and a lot of the water is being used to kill sagebrush. There's other ways to get rid of it, but that was a very handy way to do that. So that's a 1911 map. I wanted to move to a 1923 map. Come on, go back. So this is a map put together by the Kane Irrigation Company, and I'll show you what's going on there. But the Kane Irrigation House is right about here, the ranch house. You can see Farrington here. We've got Walker Creek there, Parker Creek here, and Rush Creek here. So what had happened, and you can't see this, so it's a good thing. At least I can't see it. I want to read to you the caption of this 1923 map. Yellow, this is 1923, indicates land to be sold to City of Los Angeles. Red indicates land to be retained by Kane Irrigation Company and Southern Sierras Power Company. So the red up here, this is where Lee Vining Creek Powerhouse is being built. So they want to keep that land for themselves. But all of this land is now in the hands of the Kane Irrigation Company and the Southern Sierras Power Company. Kane had gone on a land buying spree from 1911 to 1923 and bought up 8,000 acres of land in the Rush Creek and Lee Vining Creek areas, all riparian lands. And then from 1923 to 29 added another 2,000 acres. So by 1933, Kane and companies that are affiliated with him own nearly all the land with water rights in the Owens Basin, in the not the Owens Basin, in the Mono Basin. They claimed 90% of all properties with water rights were in their portfolio. So you might be saying, huh? Sale to the City of Los Angeles, 1923? So what had been going on is that J.S. Kane from Bodie had gotten extremely interested in hydroelectric power development. And while he was still in Bodie, he and his manager put in the first hydroelectric plant, the Green Creek hydroelectric plant, that ran a power line to Bodie to operate stamping mills in the Standard Mine. But then in 1910, Kane financed up a little bit over $1 million to build the Jordan plant off of what's now 167. And was it last week or last month, Rich gave a fabulous talk on the Jordan plant and the Jordan tragedy of 1911. But Kane And $1 million is a lot of money. And so Kane also is active in building the Rush Creek hydro plant, which was built from 1915 to 1917 and was producing electricity then. And then in 1920 to 1924, built the Lee Vining Creek power plant. And that had the name the Southern Sierras Power Company on it. And the reason is that Kane, wanting to develop these hydro plants, needed access to expertise and capital to be able to do it. As I said, the Jordan plant cost about $1 million in 1909, 1910. The Rush Creek plant was $1.6 million to build, and I don't have any figures for Lee Vining Creek, but it was probably about the same as it was for the Rush Creek. And he made arrangements and partnerships with the Southern Sierras Power Company. Some of the engineers came from Southern Sierras, Charles Poole, Rudy, and a couple of others also that worked up on all these plants. And so Kane is interested in developing hydroelectric power, and to protect his interests, he wanted to make sure that he controlled all the water with riparian rights, water going into Rush Creek, into Mono Lake, and Lee Vining Creek as well. So these hydro plants are producing hydroelectricity, and it's being sent down from, here's Mono Lake. The hydro plants are sending electricity to silver and gold mines in Nevada, but they're also taking the electricity down through Bishop, which is the nexus, and got to go back there, all the way down to eastern Los Angeles, east of Los Angeles, and down to the Mexican border. This is all put in place. This transmission line was built in 1910, and these plants were then hooked into it. By the way, you can still see this was the longest, 213-mile long. This is the longest high voltage transmission line in the U.S. at the time, and it's still there. You can still see it. So Kane is buying up the property because he wants to protect his hydroelectric interests. So what he and the Southern Sierras Power Company realize is that they would rather make money off the sale of land and water and keep the hydro plants. And so in 1923, Kane Irrigation Company, the Southern Sierras Power Company, and the Nevada California Power Company, which is running the transmission lines down to Southern California, put together a proposal to sell all of their land in the Mono Basin to the city of Los Angeles for $5.5 million. Now, the city of Los Angeles turns them down. That's another long story, but they turn them down and walk away from the ability to own all the land and water rights in the Mono Basin in 1923, only to come back to it. So here they are. They want to sell it, and they don't know what to do with the water, so they just keep dumping it into places like the Kane Ranch to irrigate it. They get investigated on the excessive use of water. They're getting a whole lot of pushback by people in the basin who want to use the water for further agricultural development, and they just keep pushing ahead anyway. So, to the question of who and why took the photograph, who and why took this photograph in 1927? We know it's on the Kane Irrigation, the Kane Ranch. But who put it together? Well, the photograph was one of 250 in a portfolio put together by the Nevada California Electric Corporation of Denver, Colorado, showing photographs of the principal plants and properties of the subsidiary companies 1927 and 1928. And the reason that they're putting this together is that they want to make another approach to the city of Los Angeles to sell their properties in the Mono Basin to the city of Los Angeles. And I'm just going to run through the table of contents of this portfolio so you can see the extent of what the Nevada California Electric Corporation owned. Dams and reservoirs. You're going to recognize some of these names. Saddlebag Lake, Levine Creek Watershed, Mount Dana, Rhine Reservoir, Sylvester Meadows, Rush Meadows Creek, or Marsh Meadows Dam, Rush Meadows Reservoir, Gem Lake Dam, Agnew Lake Dam, Grant Lake Dam, and then you've got some stuff in down in Bishop as well. Hydro plants, the Pool plant, Mill Creek plant, Rush Creek plant, and then the Bishop Creek plants as well. Transmission lines all the way down to Southern California. Substations, San Bernardino. Terminal station, El Centro. Tonopah, Manhattan, Coachella, Hemet, Valley Vista, Yuma. All of their electricity coming out of the Mono Basin is being sent down to Southern California. They have steam plants. They have office buildings in Riverside. They have offices elsewhere in El Centro. They've got Calexico, San Jacinto, Victorville, San Bernardino, Palm Springs. They have ice plants, delivery trucks, and they have ranches. The Abalor Ranch in the Owens Valley and Cane Ranch in the Mono Basin. So you might be thinking, well, the Cane Ranch, he's a local guy from Bodie, right? But it gets bought up and is part of, by the late 1920s, is part of the Nevada California Electric Corporation. It's a holding company based in Denver, Colorado, and capital for the hydroelectric plants in the Mono Basin was raised by bond issues sold in New York City. And the buyers were not just simply those in the United States, but from Europe as well. So it's the holding company. The Southern Sierras Power Company operates the hydro plants. The NevCal Electric Company operates the high voltage transmission line. You've got NevCal Construction, which builds them. Then there's the Hillside Bishop Hydroelectric Plant. And then we've got, of course, the Cane Irrigation and the Cane Ranch. So the photograph is taken, it's not about the cattle. It's about putting together a portfolio of their vast holdings of a very large, and I don't know how well they're capitalized, but there's got to be tens, if not $100 million in the Mono Basin. So the Cane Irrigation Company in 1927 is not locally owned. It's a key part of a large, well-organized corporate conglomerate. So why did NevCal Electric Corp put together that photo of photos? It had entered into negotiations with the city of Los Angeles over the period from 1928 to 1923 to sell all of its holdings again to the city, including the Cane Ranch. So what can we learn from a photo of cattle? Well, we can interrogate it and we can learn a bit about the processes of environmental change in the Mono Basin. It's mostly about water, but it's not all about water. There's another storyline. Actually, there's several storylines. Settler farms and ranches from the 1860s on, and part of that story is the dispossession of the Gazetica people from their land, and that's another story. There's the storyline of hydroelectric power development and outside capital, and what that did to the environment of the Mono Basin. And for those of you who are in the basin, you know that those hydroelectric plants are still in business. They are now owned by Southern California Edison, and Southern California Edison is in the process of relicensing all of those dams. And the Rush Creek hydro project is in the final stages. Levining power plant system is beginning, and so is it's now called the Lundy power plant development up where Jordan used to be. So all of those dams and all of these lands, the dispossession of the Gazetica, are about the changes in the land. Also, what we're learning is that decisions about Mono Basin that had dramatic effect on the environment here were made. Some of them were made by the settlers early on, but by the 1920s, the decisions are being made in Denver and New York City. And then with the 1933 sale of Mono Basin land to Los Angeles, then begins the story of the diversion of water out of the Mono Basin and the Mono Lake story, which is obviously a big one. But also, it's a story about the elimination and return of sagebrush to the Mono Basin. So, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I can't see myself. I can't see any of you. So I got to ask Rich, we got to stop sharing. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing now. Okay.
And there you are.
I can see myself again. There we go. Okay.
So, Bob, this is Rich Foy.
Yeah, Rich.
First of all, holy cow. The major photo there with all the cattle in it is, there's grass everywhere you look, and somewhere, I don't remember, someone in 1923 talked about this, you killed the sagebrush through excess water, and then the grasses, both seeded and natural, come back. Any way to know if we were looking at natural grass on that photo?
No. So that's a question that that is in my mind, and I've been working and thinking about it. That's one of the reasons why I got in touch with Tim Messick to begin with. I've also been in touch with Ann Howell, another botanist who's on the presentation tonight. I also talked with the rangelands officer of the Forest Service, and you wouldn't be too surprised to know that there haven't been any real studies of the return of sagebrush to the Mono Basin. Even though the scenic area is under the control of the Forest Service, they either are not interested in sagebrush or they're too short-staffed. So there haven't been any real good studies of it. So the answer is, we don't know. There's everything that's there is there now. What was there before? We have some guesses, but we don't know what is returned. The sagebrush communities are pretty interesting. It's, as I said, it's not just sagebrush, but rabbit brush, bitter brush. We've got other grasses and forbs and rushes as well. So it's an interesting story, but I don't know what the answer is.
Does anyone else have any more questions for Bob?
There's a bit in the chat.
Oh, that's Tim. Hi, Tim. Thanks for being here. 6 new messages. There we go. Okay. Road cleanup. Okay, Bill Ney. Pictures of the Ney Ranch. I'll have to get in touch with Bill. Oh, Rhonda and Hank, can you still find and see any of the ditches? Yes, you can. You can see if you do a Google Earth, you can see the outlines of them. But if you travel out 120 towards South Tufa, in the straight stretch, you'll see some indentations in the land to the north, to the north and south of 120, and those are remainders of the ditches. The ditches also are you can see them, and you can walk through them between 395 and Parker Creek. They're all out there, and you can, where the current return ditch goes. If you get up to the top of that and you look back down to the east, you can see one of the major ditches that's still there as well. So yes, you can still see them. So let's see what else we got. Barry is there. Tim. Okay. Robin, what kind of restoration work has been done to restore sagebrush communities, and what was the Kane Ranch holdings? Robin, I'm sorry to say there's been no specific restoration work on sagebrush. Some of the studies of the existing plant communities occurred in the early 2000s as part of the work being done by the consulting firm McBain and Trush that was hired to do some of the restoration studies for the stream restorations of not just of Rush Creek, Levine Creek, and then Parker and Walker as well. And so they did some studies of them, but the all of the restoration work that's been going on that was required of the LADWP, especially after 1994 decision 1631. There's some sagebrush that's part of it, but mostly they're interested in the restoration work of other plants that were much more close to the riparian corridor and then the floodplain. So it's just the sagebrush that's returned has done so voluntarily.
Well, if there are no more questions, thank you very much, Bob. That was a neat presentation. And
Thank you all for being here.
our next meeting will be, I believe, May 5th, and it'll be Mike Prather, and we will meet at the community center, and I think we'll also be on Zoom. And the important part before the meeting is to come to the potluck because we always have great food. Thank you all for coming. Good night.